everybody, I hope everyone is doing well today. So I have a few announcements that I would like to share with you all. I did finish looking at all of the diagnostic essays that have been submitted. Now keep in mind that the diagnostic essay was not formally graded. It is counted for participation, so if you completed the diagnostic essay, then you already got participation points for it. And there's a lot that I would like to talk about today. So today is when we really start some of our major writing assignments. And what we're going to be talking about today, and starting today, is the oratory analysis unit, and also the oratory unit in general. But there are a couple of things that I would like to talk about, including our schedule, because I have updated our schedule, so definitely take a look at our schedule. Each day we have class. So we are on week 3 already, and what we're talking about today is the intro to public speaking and the intro to oratory, and I have assigned begin drafting the oratory analysis, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Now on Thursday we will talk about rhetorical situations, different kinds of writing, and academic contexts. Now please note that next Tuesday, February 16th, is a faculty development day, and we do not have class that day, but that is the day that you should continue working on your oratory analysis. And please note that on Thursday, February 18th is when the oratory analysis is due, and that will be due on midnight through a Google Doc link. So anyway, I would like to begin talking about that. And it will be under our daily lessons tab once I have that up and once I am done with this video. But for now, I will just go ahead and use the links right in our schedule. So I will be going over the intro to oratory and the oratory analysis. And you can also find the guidelines for the oratory analysis right in our schedule. But it will be within this lesson as well. So, like I said, there is a bit of a public speaking component to this course for 1530. So this is the intro to oratory and the oratory analysis, and this is our lesson 5. And this is one of my favorite quotes from Ralph Waldo Emerson: "Speech is power, speech is to persuade, to convert, or to compel." So we're talking about the art of rhetoric today. So rhetoric is persuasive composition as an art has long been divided into 5 major categories. And I would like to take a look at these links just briefly. So what is invention when it comes to oratory? So invention is very much tied to the rhetorical appeal of logos, or logical appeal. So hopefully everyone remembers logos, ethos, pathos from 1510. We will be using those again. Those pathetic appeals are definitely the backbone of oratory and public speaking. So with that said, invention is tied to the rhetorical appeal of logos, or being oriented to what an author would say rather than how that might be said. So invention describes the argumentative, persuasive core of rhetoric. Aristotle, in fact, defines rhetoric primarily as invention, or discovering the best available means of persuasion. So keeping that in mind, so arrangement concerns how one orders speech or in writing. And in ancient rhetorics, arrangement referred solely to the order to be observed in an oration. And what an oration is just something like a political speech. And we are exposed to political speeches and persuasive speeches all the time, whether that be political or even in advertising. We are constantly exposed to these things. So with that in mind, Cicero, who was a colleague of Aristotle's, aligned certain rhetorical appeals with specific parts of the oration. In the introduction, it is necessary for one to establish his or her own authority. Therefore, one employs ethical appeal, and in the conclusion, one finishes up by employing emotional appeal or pathos. So with that in mind, going a little bit further, style concerns the artful expression of ideas. So this might be something like how speakers express their main ideas or their main arguments within a political speech. So if invention addresses what is to be said, style addresses how this will be said. So from a rhetorical perspective, style is not incidental, superficial, or supplementary. Style names how ideas are embodied in language and customized to communicative contexts, or in other words, word choice. So because of style, rhetoricians have given great attention to every aspect of linguistic form, or word style. Memory. Now, memory is very much something that leaves an impression on listeners, especially during a political speech. So what makes a political speech memorable? Or what makes an oratory speech memorable? So memory is tied to the improvisational necessities of a speaker as the need to memorize a complete speech for delivery. And of course, lastly, you have the most important part, which is delivery. So delivery has to do with how something is said rather than what is said. So delivery talks about rhetoric, oral rhetoric at use in a public context, like I was saying, like in a political speech, or even in some religious sermons, just as examples, can be viewed more broadly as that aspect of rhetoric that concerns the public presentation of discourse, whether that might be oral or written. So keeping that in mind, rhetorical treatises through the centuries have been set up in light of these 5 categories. Although memory and delivery have consistently received less attention after the late 19th century, why do you think these two have received less attention since then? Now, some of that might have to do with technology. We're no longer required to memorize speeches as a whole to be able to deliver them. Some people even type up their speeches, and then even in public speaking courses. Some of you may run into a public speaking course at JCC at some point. And that's why part of this component is included within Composition 2 as well, is to prepare you for those future academic presentations that you might be facing, whether that might be in academia, at college, or at work. So keeping these things in mind can be very helpful for your future career as well. So going from there, why delivery and why oration? So rhetoric is a tool for writers and orators, which empowers them to convince their readers and listeners about their point of view. So often we find rhetorical examples of oratory in religious sermons and in political speeches. They aim to make comparisons, to evoke tender emotions, to censor rivals, and all of it is done to persuade listeners. And excellent speakers often have talent. I do not give lectures or a little charity. When I give myself. And that is a quote from Walt Whitman. He is one of my favorite poets, actually. So let's just take a minute and step back for a second. So oratory is used in everyday situations. So this is something to be thinking about. Maybe take a moment to think about this. So reflect on the following prompt for about 3 to 5 minutes. The intent is to insert your own experiences into the lesson because, after all, everyone has given a speech at some point, whether they realize it or not. That could be something as simple as a toast at a friend's wedding. So anytime you speak to a group of people, you have conducted oratory. Think about a speech you have given in the past. What was the purpose? Now, this could be for a class. It could be for a toast at maybe a friend's wedding, or a goodbye speech, a debate club performance. Anything like that, really. So what was the reaction to this speech? Do you think you were a good speaker? And why or why not? And that's just something to think about on your own for maybe 2 minutes as you're watching this video. One of my examples that I tend to come up with is I took a public speaking course back at Hilbert College during my undergrad career. Some years ago. That was quite a while ago. And things that I would do to help me memorize my speech would be to use flashcards or writing down main points on flashcards. And that was like a memory trick that I would use during a speech, because trying to memorize a whole speech is very difficult. So that's something that might make things a little bit easier as well in current times, definitely, is to use little flashcards for yourself. But that's just an example there. So a few of you probably have given a few PowerPoint presentations, especially during high school. At some point, you probably had group presentations, and that is public speaking. And it's perfectly normal to have a bit of stage fright. You may even enjoy group projects a little bit or having a group presentation. But really, it's time to go from being a good public speaker to rocking the room. It's time for the next level. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about. So novices can get by putting together a great plan with nice slides, but more experienced speakers have a few custom tricks up their sleeve to make a good impression. But the masters know that there are 3 things that need to bring an audience to their side: credibility, relevancy, and memorability. It's not quite as easy as you think, but that's why we call them masters. So credible, getting the audience to listen. So the first few moments are only the ones you get for free. Everything after that must be earned by your listeners. No matter what the topic of your presentation, your credibility is always in question. So why should the audience believe a word you say? And that's when you establish credibility. So credibility is not always established simply by boasting your credentials or having them introduced. It's about confidence, appearance, and language. Say more than the letters about your name. Or more so, being credible is what your audience needs to get to know you before they trust you completely. So relevancy, getting the audience to care. Once your audience feels like they know you and trust you, they will listen. Once you have them under your spell, you owe it to them to make what you are saying matter. Or conversely, your audience owes you nothing. And you also want to think about, how does your topic relate to their lives? Describe in a way that they can appreciate it and that they can relate to it. And of course, being memorable. So unlike the written word, a live presentation flows through time like a river. It's usually in one ear and then out the other. So politicians, newscasters, advertisers, and even religions have long ago figured this out. So they make use of catchphrases, emotional connection, and repetition. So religious ceremonies often attach a familiar tactile sense to a ritual, or politicians like to attach a sense of identity and community to their message. And news media outlets, or even journalists, or news anchors and reporters, condense their message into easily digestible sound bites. And now advertisers, which we just had the Super Bowl, for example, a lot of those commercials use repetition, and they use little elements of oratory to get you to try to remember things like commercials. So we are exposed to that constantly, especially in modern day society here in 2021. So masters of oration. So this is a video of Obama. And Obama makes all 3 oratory moves in this short video here. So what I would like everyone to do is to watch this video. And I think it's only about 2 to 3 minutes long. But at least it will give you an example of what it's like to have a successful oratory. And like I said, political speeches are usually chock full of these techniques, even without you thinking about it. So this is about 5 minutes here. So anyways, after watching that video, I would like to talk about a brief review of logos, ethos, and pathos. So taking that a step further, so of the modes of persuasion provided through speech, there are 3 species. For some are in the character of the speaker, some are in the listener in some way, and some are in the argument itself. And that is from Aristotle on rhetoric. So in other words, Aristotle argues there are 3 elements to the art of persuasion. And of course, we're all familiar with these. Ethical appeal. So that means the speaker is perceived by the audience as credible or not. Now, pathos is emotional appeal. The writer or speaker attempts to persuade the audience by making them feel certain emotions. And logos is logical appeal. The writer attempts to persuade the audience by the use of arguments that they will perceive as logical. So we call these 3 elements rhetorical appeals. It's not necessary for every act of persuasion to make use of all 3 appeals, but a lot of political speeches do nowadays. So anyway, taking that from there. How often, however, there is some element of each. So in academic writing, ethos and logos are giving more respect than pathos. An essay that relies primarily on pathos with little use of ethos and logos is unlikely to be perceived by an academic audience as persuasive. So this is the rhetorical triangle here, or an overview of the 3 rhetorical appeals. So ethos is ethical appeal. So ethos is established through a variety of factors, including a speaker's credentials or their professionalism, their research, and so forth. So that is that side of the triangle, which builds ethos to make your audience trust what you are saying. And logos is, of course, logical appeal. So logical appeal represents the facts, the research, and other message elements that provide proof or evidence to a claim. So that is when you use logos to convince your audience that what they are hearing or seeing is well-researched, well-built, or otherwise worth their time. And of course, pathos, which is emotional appeal, has been made to represent how an audience feels or experiences a message. So the appeal of pathos makes a person feel excited, sad, angry, motivated, jealous, or any other type of emotion that you might feel when experiencing that appeal. And they are trying to persuade you to act based on what they say. So keeping this in mind, rhetoric is defined for our purposes as the art of persuasion, the study of the art of persuasion, and an individual act of persuasion. So in the work we'll do in our oratory analysis, there are 2 parties that you should be concerned with. The rhetor, or the speaker, the party that is attempting to persuade, and the audience, the party that is the target of persuasion. So we will be analyzing the inauguration speech that was given by Biden back at the end of January when he first became president. So what I'm saying here is that the speaker here is Biden and the audience here is you. So we will consider ourselves to be a third party, which is basically the observer. We're not being persuaded, we're not persuading. We're just observing the interaction between the writer and the audience. And of course, the everyday audience in general back at the inauguration, at the speech, was the American people, or the nation as a whole. So the rhetorical appeals are the three elements to the art of persuasion as defined by Aristotle, which is ethos, ethical appeal, is perceived by the audience as credible or not. Pathos, the rhetor attempts to persuade the audience by making them feel certain emotions, or emotional appeal. And logos, the rhetor attempts to persuade the audience by the use of arguments they will perceive as logical. So my assignment here is to watch Biden's inauguration speech and take a few notes when you're watching the video. And feel free to watch it a couple times if you need to. So how does Biden use ethos or ethical appeal within his speech? How does Biden utilize pathos or pathetic appeal or emotions within his speech? What sort of emotions does he try to invoke within his audience? What about elements of logical appeal? Is he a credible speaker? And why or why not? And what is his main argument? Is it effective? Why or why not? What about his body language throughout the speech? What sorts of ideas and values does Biden express? And to that note, he might use some emotional appeal within that as well. So lastly, what are your impressions of the speech overall? Does it require improvement? Or is Biden an effective oral speaker, do you think? So these are things to be taking notes on. So what I would recommend doing is grabbing a piece of paper or a Google document, whatever your preferred method is, for writing notes, and maybe take some notes during the speech. So from there, you can watch the speech right directly here. And you can click on full screen. So this is about 22 minutes long. So it should be plenty to write the oratory analysis on. And like I said, if you need to go back and rewatch the speech, feel free, and take additional notes, feel free. But keeping that in mind, these are the oratory analysis guidelines. And you can get to the link right by clicking on the image here or right on the image above. So I would like to go ahead and go over the oratory speech analysis guidelines. And this is our next assignment. So here's the assignment here. In 3 or more paragraphs, consider the speech Biden made at his inauguration. Using the lesson 5 slides and your notes from watching the speech, form an argument about whether or not Biden is an effective speaker. So the oratory analysis should be about 750 words in length. It's okay if it's a little bit over that, but it should be at least 750 words, including an introduction and thesis statement, body paragraphs, and a conclusion. And it should be in 12-point font, Times New Roman, and shared as a Google document. So things to consider within the oratory analysis and things to be writing about within your body paragraphs. You should be considering ethos, logos, and pathos appeal. And for context, it helps to include a brief summary of the speech, such as the main point or Biden's main argument. So from there, consider the purpose of the speech. What is the main topic communicated to the audience? Why is Biden given this particular speech? Now, just to give a hint, a lot of his inauguration speech has to do with unity, or bringing the American people together. So to what end does he talk about unity, and what sort of importance does that term hold within throughout his speech, especially if you take a look at the structure of the speech? So then from there, is Biden a knowledgeable speaker? How does the speaker convince us of their knowledge of the topic? Does the speaker's language, use, and clarity of voice suggest that they know their stuff? So this is talking about word choice. We were talking quite a bit about word choice just a few minutes ago. So how does Biden's word choice influence his speech? Does his language use make him an effective speaker? Why or why not, do you think? Now this is another important one, body language. How does the speaker use posture, eye contact, gestures, and facial expressions to indicate their confidence and their commitment to the topic? Now, if you watch certain speakers throughout history, whether it's Martin Luther King or Obama or Biden, famous people use a lot of body language when they're speaking in order to convey their main point. I do it all the time. I'm sure you all have noticed, I tend to move my hands when I'm speaking, and that is because that helps me get my main point across, or at least it helps me process my ideas. We use body language all the time, whether we're speaking to an audience or to a friend, or even, in my case, speaking to my students. As embarrassing as that may be. So if you ever see me moving my hands, that's why. So anyways, effectiveness of argument. Conduct a brief argument analysis. So that is to discuss how well the speaker conveyed and supported their claim, and to the extent to which you believe they led their intended audience to change the way they think, feel, or act. And again, that part is thinking about the logos, ethos, and the pathos. So lastly, I would like everyone to form an overall impression. So what do you think of Biden's speech overall? Is it a success rhetorically or not? Is he an effective speaker or not? And why do you think so, or why do you not think so? So the oratory analysis is due on Thursday, February 18th by midnight. And you can submit your oratory analysis through Google Documents. And you can share that link with me through my email by the due date by midnight. So anyway, that is it for now. But if you have any questions, feel free to email me or stop in during office hours. I have office hours this week on Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. And I will keep you all updated as far as some ongoing projects that I have going for this course as well. Anyway, that is it. I hope you all have a wonderful day. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, and have a great day. All right, thank you. Goodbye, y'all.